Hello there, this is hopefully going to be a quick tutorial covering how to get Shadertoy GLSL shaders into Touchdesigner. There are a bunch of videos and tutorials about for this, but I had a specific request on Facebook that I picked up, and I just thought it would be a good excuse for a video. Now, as a disclaimer, this is not a GLSL coding video in any way, shape or form. It's just a way of using Shadertoy shaders in Touchdesigner if you're wanting to learn. This is one of the first ways that I learned how to actually use GLSL in any sort of scope. It allowed me to bring them in and then change things and understand what each bit of code was doing. It really helped me understand the math that went into it all. Now, on the derivative wiki, there's already a really nice sort of coverage of this on Touchdesigner specific terms that you might come across, but it can be quite heavy. But there is this amazing guide from Envoid that is linked below. It was made a while ago now, but it still actually stands up to the test of time. And the request I got today was how to import a Shadertoy shader that had a buffer and the main image. But we're going to start with something a bit lighter that's just a simple shade. Well, a simple shader. This is a lot of work has gone into this to create this beautiful effect, and we're going to show you relatively easily how to bring it into Touchdesigner. Now, please don't use these in any commercial scope. It's not fair to the guys that have spent the time creating these, unless they've specifically said the Creative Commons for their shader. Please don't go and start ripping everything off just because you've seen how to do it. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to copy the shader code that's in Shadertoy, and then I'm going to open Touchdesigner and bring in a GLSL top. Now, with the latest version of 99, it's actually way easier to code. It auto-compiles, it does all the hard work for you. All you need to do is change the text that's in the GLSL1 pixel data and see what happens in the GLSL info dat. So I'm actually going to split my screen two ways just so I can see what's happening. And I'm going to edit the context of this, select it all and paste the new code, and you'll see we start getting loads of errors. Basically a bunch of undefined variables, and it's unable to complete the link because it can't compile. In Shadertoy, there are a bunch of predefined inputs that give you variables that you can use in your shader. We need to do the same thing in Touchdesigner using the vector array or matrix information. So first thing we're going to do is I'm going to go through and find the main image for this code. I know I spent a bunch of time going through it, and it does a lot of sort of geometric calculations for the shapes that you saw moving. But we want to find the main image function that is needed in Shadertoy, this one here. And we're going to delete the image part and reduce it to main and delete all of the information in there. So now we just have void main. And this is the part where all the drawing is actually done for the shader. All the way at the very top, we're going to define some functions. We're going to do, we basically need to define the space, or we're going to define this matrix that's drawn here. In Touchdesigner, it's still referred to as the frag color, but we need to actually tell the shader what frag color is before it can understand it. So I'm going to do layout location is equal to 0. I'm going to do out vec4, so it's a 4 vector output. I'm going to call it frag color semicolon. And then we need to define a bunch of these variables that are given to them by default in Shadertoy. So we can see in this example it's looking for resolution, frag chord, and time, and channel 0. So first we'll take care of resolution and time, because they are things included here. So we want to take resolution and time from the vectors inside Touchdesigner. So I'm going to come in here, I'm going to make a variable called iResolution. I'm going to set it to whatever resolution I want. I'm actually, and I'm going to leave the other three blank. So we're going to do uniform vec4 iResolution. I want this to be a 3. So I've actually made resolution a 3 vector number, which means that it'll actually read the first, second and third piece of information here. But as this is only 2D, we just leave the third one blank. And then we're also going to introduce uniform float iTime. And simply for that, iTime is going to be a single number that comes in. And I'm going to do it in code, so I'm going to do abs time. Or let's do e.time. No, abs time dot seconds. So that will give us the absolute time that this patch has been running in terms of seconds. So we click off and we can see that it's removed all the undefined variables already because we've defined these ones here. So all we need to do are change frag chord, iChannel. Now these are slightly different than these because they're actually coming from internal variables in shader language. It's just Touchdesigner uses a slightly different terminology. iChannel 0 in Shadertoy is actually referencing to the first input. Well, thankfully in Touchdesigner we have physical inputs. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make a random noise and plug it in. And then in any reference to iChannel, which we can see there's one down here, I'm going to change it to the Touchdesigner specific reference, that is std 2d inputs, and then I'm going to do the first input. So familiar with Touchdesigner, we know that is basically a variable or an operator, you could see it as, and we are saying that the first input is, so input 0, index 0, is a 2D image, and we want to sample that. And then frag chord is much the same, but it just needs to use special terminology that is GL_F frag coordinate. And we'll see an error here that's saying that we're trying to implicitly cast from a 4 vector into a 2 vector. And down here, if we look at the code, it's defining UVs, which are on a 2D scale, using the resolution. So instead of using the entire of the frag coordinates, which is actually something like XYZW, let's say it's something like that, we just want to use X and Y of it. So we're telling it to use 2 vectors of that 4 vector variable, or array I should say. And the same down here, we're going to do GL_frag dot XY because it's another 2 vector channel. So with that done, our resolution is unassigned. Oh, so I've made a spelling mistake. Delete that. Resolution. And there we'll see that this is outputting 1280 by 720 shader, but it's currently limited to 2560 by 2560. So if we change the output resolution, you'll see we get this amazing detailed scene, exactly as it is in the shader. And massive compliments to Shane, who made this, because it is absolutely stunning, and I can't believe how efficient it is as well. That's another thing you'll learn to appreciate with shaders. But onto the main task. We want to look at how to make a dual buffer shader. So here we have this one that when you play it and we push space, it has this sort of under the microscope cellular sort of look, and you can click and hold and it'll start to make new chains as you go. So what we want to do is the same as before. We're going to make a new GLSL. I'm going to call this one buffer A. I'm going to say yes to re-update the links, and I'm going to make a second one and call it image. Now the steps that we take here are actually going to be almost identical to what we just did, but on a slightly more complicated scale in terms of Touchdesigner programming. So we're going to start with buffer A, and we're going to copy it and put it into our code. And then we'll see that we instantly get errors again, and the compiling's all out of whack. We are going to layout location equals 0 out vec for frag color. So again, we're setting up our output vector, just letting it know to assign the memory for all those pixels. Next thing we need to do is uniform. Let's see what this is asking for. High resolution. That is vec3. And then we're also going to have uniform vec float. If I can type float iframe. And then we can see there's also something here referring to iMouse. So I'm going to do uniform vec. Let's have a look at where iMouse is referenced to see how many. So we're only using 2 vectors of iMouse, and I can't see anywhere else that. So I'm saying that because I can see the X and Y. So basically we need to know where the person clicks on the screen. But I think we, yeah, I think we should get away with that. So let's do vec to iMouse. Swizzle mask element not present, not present Z. Oh, that's wrong. It needs to be 3 because it uses the Z variable of iMouse, which we'll get to in a minute. Now looking at this, we can see channel 0, 2, and 1. But if we look at the Shadertoy, I'm going to pause this just because of how much it uses, we can see that the input in channel 0 is actually the buffer itself. So we need to set up a feedback loop inside Touchdesigner to handle that. Second is just a standard image that is the base. So every time you push space, it uses that image to map. You can sort of see the circles as they relate here. And then we have keyboard input that allows me to push space to reset it. So in vectors, we know that, oh sorry, not vectors, over here in our inputs, we know that we need an image. So I'm going to make a noise, and that's going to go into 2. We also know that we need to send our own patch back into it, or our own top. So I'm going to attach a feedback top and plug the buffer into it. So now that we have our noise being fed back by the buffer. And then finally in the third, we are going to do a keyboard in. I'm going to do keyboard 0. Oh, keyboard 1 I'll do. I'm going to do a chop 2. So now every time it's pressed, it gives us white, but this will do. So we plug that in there. So now we have our 3 inputs set. We can go through and refer to them. So I'm going to do ichan, and then I'm going to replace them all with std2d inputs, colon brackets, and then refer to whatever number appears. So I'm going to select that and go next. This is another 0, so I'm going to paste that. Down here we have another 0. Down here we have 2, so it's listening for the keyboard. And then down here we have 1, so it's looking at the first input image. Down here is also looking at 1. And I think this is the last one. Yeah, so we click off, and what do we have? No program defined. So I think that might be because we haven't updated our this yet. So no program defined, I think that is because it's not seen main, whereas Shadertoy uses main image, we use main. And there you go, undefined variable. So the last thing I need to change is frag card, and that is gl underscore frag, and you can see this is already set up for the 2D vector. gl underscore frag, gl underscore frag. Too much data in construct type 132, so this needs to be .xy. There we go. Yeah, xyz. Too much data. So this is to, although this is making a 3 vector, it's actually only needing the first two added to it. And what do we have here? Resolution is unassigned, so let's do iResolution 1280 by 720. Oh, that's too many. iframe is going to be abs time.frame. Now I think the frame number here actually needs to be a fairly low number, just looking at the way that the shader works. So you probably want something like divided by 100. Mouse. And then I'm going to do 0, 0, 0. So something is clearly up here. Okay, there we go. So that's slightly better there. It's just the time frame we were limiting it to just wasn't moving enough. So now that's running. If we push 1, it should respawn it. We might be too far along. Divided by 1,000. About 10,000. So it's just about getting it the right amount. You can see that the value that goes in here really determines what it looks like and how quickly it decays. So I think if I do that and then I do me.time.frame, you can sort of see how that relates to the input value we've got. And that really is sort of the way that you use this to learn. So you can see that the effect's happening. You go through here and find out where iframe is being applied and understand the mass that is going into that. So I'm going to change this to abs time.frame again, just so we have that. And then we're going to plug this into the second one. Change its resolution to 1280 by 720. And then we're going to go and get the code for this. And we do almost the exact same thing, but this is a nice, this is basically just a colorizing tool. It's going to be much quicker. We do layout location equals 0 outvic for frag color. I make everything in Americanization spelling. Frag card next. And we do GL underscore frag. And then we do uniform rec 3i resolution. Okay, and then we do i resolution. And this is std2d inputs. And there we go. We can see we have almost the exact same effect as is generated on the website. I say again, please don't just use this as an excuse to go and rip off a bunch of shaders off the internet. Use it as a learning tool, a way to actually understand what's happening here, and sort of learn how to better yourself inside Touchdesigner. I'm going to close this. I'm not going to save anything because that would be stealing.